This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
This is Phil Lamar, the voice of Green Lantern and Static.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review.
Hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUReview.com.
And on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 400 of the DCAU Review. I am Liam. With me, it's Cal. Cal, we are at kind of an insane milestone as far as episodes, and we have another very exciting, very in-depth character spotlight to mark the occasion.
You're doggone right we are. Happy 400, buddy. Yeah, it's an honor to have been doing this for as long as we've been doing it, to reach the big round number of 400 episodes. I don't know what that says about the podcast, that we've been doing this for as long as that we've been doing it, and reached 400 episodes. You know, I don't know how many podcasts out there reach gigantic, large numbers like this. I feel like niche review podcasts are usually like, I guess maybe if there's a soap opera podcast out there, like a Bold and the Beautiful podcast review, they could have content for literal decades and never run out of stuff. But yeah, it's been an honor so far to do the prior 399 reviews, and we're continuing here with our 400th, as you mentioned, the DCAU character spotlight getting dusted off. And for a big round number such as number 400, we felt it was pretty important to shine that spotlight on one of the more seminal characters. And since we already did Robin, we did Grayson Robin, we figured, hey, what's the next best thing? How about Batgirl? Let's see what Batgirl can do, as the line goes. And so today's episode, we're going to cover all of Barbara Gordon's appearances in Batman the Animated Series and the subsequent tie-in movie to Batman the Animated Series. I guess technically also the adventures of Batman and Robin, if you want to truly get into the nerdy dirty. But we're excited to talk a lot about Batgirl today. We're going to go over all of her original Batman the Animated Series appearances, as I mentioned. But then we also get to do a lot of the fun stuff that we do here on the Spotlight, which is not only recap the reviews that we've already done, but also look at those tie-in comic appearances, of which Batgirl has quite a few of appearances. And then we'll talk about, her musical themes, which to me is one of the best themes a character has outside of the Dark Knight himself in the entire Batman the Animated Series run. We'll also talk about the voice actresses. That's right, there were two of them that supplied the voice of Batgirl in that original run. And then we have a whole laundry list of toys and collectibles and goodies and things to talk about, at least for that original Batgirl costume from Batman the Animated Series, to look at as well, to wind things down here. It's going to be a lot of fun. Might be a little bit longer than the last Spotlight episode that we did, because it is a big character. But hey, it's episode 400. Why expect any less?
Absolutely, Cal. Excited to talk about, as you said, all of those on-screen appearances, and as well as her extracurriculars and action figures and comic books and the like as well. Very excited to get to all of that. And we'll just remind you briefly here that the podcast, as always, is brought to you by the best way to support this very podcast, and that is, of course, at buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. More on that later. But since we've got such a big one today, Cal, let's get right into it. As always, we'll start with the character's comic book origins. Batgirl, the Barbara Gordon version, debuted way back in 1967 in Detective Comics number 359. She was, of course, created by Julie Schwartz, Gardner Fox, Carmine Infantino, and apparently the basic idea was from William Dozier. Suffice to say, it serves a purpose. I think Batgirl almost from, you could almost look at it, I don't look at it necessarily this way, but you could look at it from a very cynical marketing standpoint of like, oh, we just need a girl character.
Mhm.
And maybe in some places it did start out that way. You know, you want to be able to market your comic books and your toys and your cartoons to girls as well as boys or whatever. But obviously, Batgirl, Barbara Gordon in particular, has kind of become a pop culture franchise in and of herself, to the point where they were like on the 1 yard line of making a live action movie about her. And then something happened. Who can remember? But suffice to say, Batgirl has become, despite very much, of course, as all of these sidekick characters, all the Bat family characters are, they're always going to be in the big man's shadow. But suffice to say, Barbara Gordon has certainly carved out her own little niche in the Batman mythos, all on her own.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think arguably maybe next to Batman and Robin in the entire Batman mythos. I think if you ask somebody off the street to name three Bat characters, Batman, Robin, and Batgirl are probably easy slam dunks as the ones that they're going to name. I think everybody knows Batgirl, regardless of who is rocking the mantle. Barbara Gordon, obviously, I feel like even transcends that. Some of that obviously has to do with her prominent place in the Adam West Batman classic 66 TV series as well. She was introduced there.
Mm-hmm.
From my recollection, I think there was some of that. They were trying to deflect the rumors or the concerns over the sexuality of Batman with a young ward in his household, which is why they introduced Aunt Harriet to that series. And then I believe they also eventually brought in Batgirl as well to sort of quell those rumors, so to speak. So, but yeah, since then, obviously, she's taken on quite the life of her own. She had quite the life here in Batman the Animated Series. She obviously, here in the early days in the original Batman the Animated Series, The Adventures of Batman and Robin, she was way more of a supporting character, sort of a side character. She obviously appears, we'll talk about here in a second. She appears first as Barbara Gordon, not Batgirl, eventually becoming Batgirl
Mm-hmm.
in this series, but really only having a couple appearances in that role, but then obviously becoming such an integral part of the series once we move to the new Batman Adventures series. But yeah, excited to talk about it today because again, she's she's certainly popular enough and deserving enough, I think, and an interesting enough character that she's not just Batman as a girl, as you mentioned, kind of like the maybe the original idea of just having something to draw a female audience in, or perhaps quiet down some protests. She really does have a well-rounded and interesting character development. And I think the idea of her being the commissioner, Batman, one of Batman's only and closest allies, being his daughter, I think is certainly an interesting character study
Mm-hmm.
as well, especially with what we know of how this relationship between Barbara and Bruce eventually evolves in this series. So yeah, lots of nuances to this. I think even without that, it's an interesting idea of your closest confidant and somebody that's your advocate for you in most Batman mythos. You have his daughter fighting alongside you and trying to fight crime as a vigilante herself. In a way that she's not going the same route her dad did. She's going on she's kind of idolizing Batman and following in his footsteps. So there's some maybe some daddy issues going on there. We'll explore here as we go through. But excited to chat about this with you today with Batgirl, aka Barbara Gordon.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, Cal, Barbara Gordon is who we're introduced first in the Batman the Animated Series timeline. She doesn't just show up already fully formed as Batgirl. Unlike Batman and Robin, who kind of already are well established, we are introduced to Barbara as a college student in the episodes. The two-part adventure, Heart of Steel, parts 1 and 2. Of course, that's a very fun and memorable two-parter featuring robot duplicates created by Carl Rossum that are replacing various movers and shakers across Gotham, from Mayor Hill to Harvey Bullock to, yes, Barbara's father, Commissioner Gordon himself. And one of the things that I think is a lot of fun, and we'll talk about it here, is that long before in this series, before we get her suiting up as Batgirl, they do a great job across her first couple appearances here of establishing that who Barbara is, that she has this kind of sense of right and wrong, that she has the sense of adventure. And ultimately, even though she's not suited up, she doesn't have the utility belt and the batarangs and the blue costume yet. But Barbara, as herself, is pretty integral into saving Batman's bacon, and by extent, all of the people that had been kidnapped by Hardak across these two episodes. So they establish right away that she's no damsel in distress, to say the least, and she's very determined to make the world a better place all on her own.
Commissioner?
No, Batman. I called you.
I expected your father, Miss Gordon.
That's why I called you. That man is not my father.
What do you mean, he's not your father?
Just what I said. Someone is impersonating my father.
What makes you think so?
Well, he doesn't have bolts in his neck or anything that obvious. He's so cold to me. But it's not just that. I can't put my finger on it, but I know he's not my father. I know I sound crazy, but I'm not. Whoever's downstairs now, it looks like Jim Gordon, talks like him, but it's not him. Please, help me, Batman.
I'll do what I can.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very fun episode, as you mentioned. Episode 92 is when we covered it here on the podcast. You can check out that in the archives quite a long time ago. That one, according to our scorecard, both unanimously 40 out of 40. So that's rarefied air for that. That episode tells you a lot about how much we enjoyed that episode. But yeah, I think to your point, they do a little bit of setup here. We're introduced to Barbara. We see that she's athletic. We see that she has a bit of detective in her, as well as she's the one who sort of uncovers her dad acting strangely once he's replaced by this robot. She's the first one to notice and bring this to the police's attention and try and get Batman's attention into investigating into this. She obviously works alongside him, tracks him to Hardak, where the factory is for these replicants, where they're being created. And as you mentioned, is certainly Batman would not have been able to do it without her in defeating Hardak. Clearly, in this episode, she saves him and helps get all of the hostages. So the mayor of Gotham, Mayor Hill, we have Commissioner Gordon and Harvey Bullock all being escorted outside with her help. So yeah, she plays an integral part here, and I think it's a fun introduction. You don't just go right into this is Batgirl. She's always wanted to be a superhero type of intro to her. We do kind of have a preamble here, and I like that you set her up as having some natural athletic ability. She has this sort of desire to take after, in some ways, her father's her father's job in understanding, investigations and in investigating anything and not taking things right on the surface for what they are when she feels like something is wrong. She's also very clearly not afraid to step up to the men in her life that are telling her that she's wrong and she's just being a silly woman. When it comes to Detective Bullock, who doubts what she's saying here. So yeah, lots of stuff going on here for this introduction to her, and it's a fun one, even if she doesn't actually get to don the costume in this episode.
Absolutely, Cal. Yeah, great example. Like I said, just her taking her own initiative. She saves Batman both by helping pull the Harvey Bullock robot into the bat signal in that very memorable sequence, and then kind of runs back into the fire literally at the end to help Batman escape after he's nearly overwhelmed by all of the other robots. So a great first debut for Barbara there. And we'd next seen her once again, still not suiting up yet, in the episode I Am the Night. Obviously, this is another one that's probably this one's at the top of almost everybody's Batman the Animated Series episode lists. Mm-hmm. Very memorable one involving sort of a dual story of Batman having this sort of dark night of the soul, pun very much intended, and at the same time dealing with this horrible moment where Jim Gordon is gunned down in the line of duty and is sort of on death's door as this crook, the Jazz Man, escapes prison and is seemingly coming for Jim to finish the job. And a lot of that episode is set around obviously Bruce's struggle with the impact Batman is making and if it's all worth it. But a wonderful little subplot that I remember us picking up on at the time is that there's a whole bit there when the Jazzman escapes where Barbara is talking to Dick Grayson in that hospital room, and you see her just clenching her fist and she's almost ranting at him about how someone's got to do something. I can't just sit here and wait for someone to come murder my dad. And you see that fire in her and that sense of justice. And it's also kind of a domino effect because she kind of makes that plea to Dick, who then goes and kind of snaps Bruce out of it. Mm-hmm. And then obviously Batman saves the day in the end, as he always does.
Jimmy Peake's a madman, Dick. He'll try to finish what he started. I feel so helpless. I can't just sit here. I've got to do something to...
I know how you feel, more than you might think. But your place is here. There's only one person who can find the Jazzman now.
You're talking about Batman.
I hope so.
So Barbara, even before, again, she's suiting up, is kind of this important domino in saving the day. And also it just shows again this fire that she has when she sees something, a right that needs to be wrong, or in this case, a good person, her father, needing to be protected, and that sort of righteous anger inside her at the thought that this slimy creep, the Jazzman, is gonna take a shot at her father again. Is you see that they're doing like I said, they do such a great job of building up who Barbara is long before she's ever in the cape and cowl.
Yeah, it is a really good one. As you mentioned, not only is it on most people's top list, it is in our top picks section, so you can check it out. That was way back on episode 134 of the podcast, if you want to check that one out. I do recall, now that you mention it, it's funny the things that we remember from the episodes that we've recorded. I know famously you'll mention, like, you forget everything you've said the second that the microphones go off. But yeah, that's in the show description, is the foreshadowing of Batgirl's desire to see wrongs righted. And that very much carries forward into the next episode, where she ultimately does decide that she has to take matters into her own hands when Batman and Robin don't seem to be bending to her will or going as far as she would like to. But it's interesting here, like you said, that I think there's a couple of things that we see here. We see Barbara's admiration, whether it's romantic or simply platonic, but her admiration for Batman and trying to pull him out of the depths of his despair when he comes to visit Gordon first in the hospital.
Batman.
How is he?
Not good.
It's my fault. Should have gotten there first. Checked it out before.
Don't blame yourself. You caught the man who shot him.
If I'd been there...
You should have been there, pointy ears. Then maybe Peake might have shot the right guy. I thought you were supposed to know what's shaking on the streets. How come you didn't tell us this was a setup?
I didn't know.
Yeah? In my book, that makes you just as responsible for him being here as the Jazzman.
Harvey, please, it wasn't his fault.
Of course, Harvey Bullock is there to pile on and accuse Batman of being the reason why Gordon is in the line of fire and why he is sitting there in the hospital at death's door. But Barbara is doing her best to try and be a cheerleader for Batman, to get him to snap out of it. She's the first one. She's the front line of defense there to try and convince him that, this isn't his responsibility. He can't be everywhere at once. He can't protect every single person in Gotham at the same time, and that her dad knows the risks of being the commissioner and being on the front lines in fighting crime. So, there is some of that you see of her trying to appeal and seeing the good in Batman, and whether that's because her dad has this relationship with Batman that she knows about, or whether it's her own personal admiration for Batman. We see that obviously continue in their relationship going forward beyond this interaction here. But yeah, this is obviously not one that she plays seemingly such a large role in, but it is somewhat more of the foundational building of who this Barbara character is. We learn a little bit more about her psyche and why maybe she eventually decides she does have to take things into her own hands.
Great point. Great segue there, Callis. Yes, we'll move on to another two-part adventure. Really, the big one, one that we hold a very special place in our hearts, thanks to its positioned on the Two-Face VHS tape from the Adventures of Batman and Robin, Warner Home Video days back in the day. Shadow of the Bat, parts 1 and 2. We see again Commissioner Gordon in trouble, a different type of trouble, legal trouble this time, as he is framed for taking bribes from Rupert Thorne. And as you mentioned there, Cal, when both Batman is unable to seemingly either publicly or privately lend his support to Gordon, and Robin is on the case but isn't really sure what exactly is going on either, as he's sort of just playing the maintenance role of patrolling around, not really trying to solve the crime himself either, as Batman goes undercover. Barbara knows that there needs to be a public appearance from someone, one of Gotham's heroes, to show that Gordon is innocent.
But you have to come to the rally. The public respects you. If they see you there, they'll know Dad's innocent.
Sorry, but there's more to this than a simple frame-up. And I'm not going to find out by appearing at rallies.
But don't you see?
The best thing you can do for him is to keep out of it. The people behind this are dangerous.
I'm a professional. Don't try this at home, huh? Sorry, Batman. You being at the rally could decide if Dad goes free. So you'll be there, one way or another.
And so she does what anyone would do. She buys a cheap Batman costume, puts some shoulder pads in, and makes the appearance herself right in front of Robin, who ironically was there to lend his support. But of course, then after some Nuns and Dynamites moment with some guys with Tommy guns showing up to apparently take a hit on young acting Commissioner Gil Mason, Barbara has to spring into action to save some of the innocent bystanders. Wouldn't you know it, really perfectly, it couldn't have worked out any better, but part of her cowl is torn, the red hair is revealed, and we see that a Batgirl has broken onto the scene as Summer Gleason is there to catch the image of her running after the thugs along with Robin. And even then, Robin is still very dismissive of her, tells her to go home and that he'll look into this himself. But Batgirl, at this point, she's had a taste of the crime-fighting lifestyle, and more importantly, someone's got to save her father. So why not her? She makes a few adjustments to the costume, adds a big yellow logo on the chest, and the colors change between episodes unexplained, but we'll get to that some other day maybe. But yes, she suits up, and as we've already alluded to, the famous line, "Let's see what Batgirl can do."
So Batman can't help me? Fine. In that case, let's see what Batgirl can do.
And part 2 becomes this the first time we see the dynamic duo become a titanic trio, as Batman, Robin, and Batgirl all team up to defeat not only Two-Face, but that slimy, no-good Gil Mason, who had stabbed Commissioner Gordon in the back and had been working with Two-Face all along to take out not only Rupert Thorne so that Two-Face could slide in as the new kingpin of crime in Gotham, but also, of course, with Gil Mason now poised to be the next commissioner of the city with Gordon out of the way. It comes down to one fateful showdown on a boat across the river. Batman and Robin may have taken down Two-Face, but only Barbara has a chance to take down Gil Mason.
Where's Batgirl?
Out there, on her own.
Let's see who you really are. Barbara? I didn't know it was you.
Would it have made a difference, Gil? I ought to leave you here.
Yeah, and that she does. Thankfully for her, she's even unmasked in the melee. It's revealed there was, of course, some flirtation that happened between the two of them. Maybe some romantic interest from at least Gil. Not sure how much there was from Barbara, but it's kind of shocking to him at that point that he realizes that this girl that he's been pining for is actually the one that's going to try and bring him down. And bring him down she does. They have this battle on a speedboat that's headed towards the makeshift Statue of Liberty in the middle of the harbor. She manages to knock Gil out and get him off the boat before the boat explodes. So we see that we have a new hero in Gotham. Bruce seemingly maybe knows who the identity of this new female crime fighter is, as he manages to mention within her earshot.
And what of the mysterious Batgirl? Who is she and where has she vanished to? Any thoughts?
As far as I'm concerned, she's as welcome in Gotham City as the Batman.
How do you think Batman will feel about that?
I suppose there's always room for one more. And I have a feeling we'll be seeing her again.
I wouldn't be at all surprised.
Yeah, this to me is the perfect intro for this character. We covered, by the way, if you want to hear that one, episode 180 of the podcast. Seeing a pattern here. This one also in our top picks section here. For this one, I gave it a 38 and you gave it a 36. So not one episode so far that has Batgirl or Barbara on it was below a 36 for the podcast. So I think that says something here. Some of the best writing including this Barbara character here. But yeah, this is the perfect intro for this character. As we mentioned, it's kind of all been building to this, her really deciding at this point. She begs Batman to intercede on her dad's behalf because she thinks that's what's best. Batman doesn't think that that's what's best. He decides to go undercover and send Robin instead. She's maybe not aware that that's what he ultimately decided to do. So she's going to make Batman appear whether he wants to or not, and forces his hand. And then we get to see the first interaction between this budding romance, rivalry that would become romance, I guess, between Barbara and Dick. Although I guess Dick never really found out that she was Batgirl until the new Batman Adventures era in Old Wounds. So he didn't know that this Batgirl character was his love interest in Barbara Gordon. But yeah, we see their relationship begin to bloom here a little bit. Although it is mainly like brother sister almost fighting, I feel like, for the majority of this episode, with Robin taking that very Batman stance of "you don't belong here, go home, please." But yeah, I love this episode. Obviously, I mean, our scores reflect how much we love this episode and how much this episode is just sort of ingrained in our hearts for appreciation. But there's so much about this episode that's fun. Batgirl obviously having such a big role, and her being the one ultimately, with Batman being kidnapped by Two-Face in the middle of the episode. She plays a big part in helping Batman get rescued in that portion with Robin. And then when she gets to arrive on her own to try and stop Two-Face and go out on the boat to stop Gil from escaping, we see she's really the one that brings that guy to justice. So she is the one responsible for bringing one of the main guys outside of the guy that belongs in Arkham to justice on behalf of her father, who's been a victim of this smear campaign. So yeah, it's great for her. It's a great introduction for this character, and the whole episode's a lot of fun. So clearly, we really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, it's always nice when the nostalgia goggles were correct. You know, like I said, we watched these two episodes 3 million times growing up because we had them on tape, and then again when the DVDs came out, probably. So getting to revisit them for the show and seeing that they still held up was great fun. And yeah, as far as batting averages go, as you pointed out, with Heart of Steel, I Am the Night, and Shadow of the Bat, man, what a run she's on. We did the Robin spotlight. I mean, there's some great episodes featuring Robin, but there's also plenty where you're like, well, he showed up and he was under a Bruce Wayne mask and he was on stilts. That's all he did in this episode. So you're like, man, it's just banger after banger with Batgirl and Barbara in this case. So yeah, and Shadow of the Bat parts 1 and 2, no exception there. That sequence on the speedboat at the end with her out on her own is quite iconic in and of itself. So a great pair of episodes, a great official debut for Batgirl, which they made you wait for. It aired a little later in the run. It was produced a little bit later in the run, certainly. So with that in mind, she would come back in the final ever episode of Batman the Animated Series produced, that being the aptly titled Batgirl Returns. And this one pretty unique for it featuring almost no Batman, with the exception of a romantic, steamy dream sequence that Barbara has at the start of the episode, thus kicking off the one of the more controversial DCAU plot lines throughout its time. That being as you mentioned or alluded to earlier, Cal, the Batman Batgirl romance. And then as it goes, Batman's out of town, but Robin and Batgirl, and mostly Batgirl, are tasked with keeping up with Catwoman, who is hot on the tail of her latest score, and they also happen to run afoul of another of the series' recurring bad guy mobster types, that being Roland Daggett. This episode maybe not as strong, but it is fun to see Batgirl and Catwoman together in this sort of reluctant partnership, Thelma and Louise type situation, with Robin kind of playing catch up and kind of being one step behind the whole time. It's a pretty fun episode in and of itself, even if it doesn't have the big dramatic moments that we've been talking about in the previous ones.
Yeah, check out our review much more recently than those other other three that we just talked about. Episode 328. So we're in the 300s at least at that point. That, as you mentioned, was the final new review of the original Batman the Animated Series / Adventures of Batman and Robin run. Our scores reflected us not loving that one. So sorry to break the streak here for Dear Barbara, but our scores were 29 and 30 respectively out of 40. So still pretty good. It's like a B, I feel like, or a B minus. As far as scores go. So yeah, I think this episode, there are some fun moments from this. Obviously, Batgirl and Catwoman convincing a naive Batgirl to team up with her to stop Roland Daggett, only for it to be a double cross at the end. She's really only interested in getting this something or other Jade Cat statue that she was always trying to steal from Roland Daggett. It's an interesting, more character development for Batgirl. It's hard because this is the final episode of the series. Obviously, you don't get much more development for her. I guess beyond what we see in Sub-Zero, but I feel like we don't really jump off of what happens in this episode to see her grow and better understand. Although by the end of the episode, I guess she's willing and understanding that she's got to take Catwoman in, regardless of Catwoman trying to weasel her way out of seeing being brought to justice. So yeah, this episode's fine. There's some fun sequences. Batgirl and Catwoman fighting in the stacked deck, taking out a bunch of creepy old gross biker guys is always fun. There's some good dialogue, obviously, between Barbara and Dick in this, and then obviously Batgirl and Robin in this as well. Once again, kind of setting up that dichotomy of Dick and Barbara together. They're this romantic couple. They're very interested in each other. They're in love. But when they put the masks on, very much so are kind of at each other's throats. Robin can't believe that Batgirl's trying to work with Catwoman or believes that she's turned over a new leaf. He's very much taking the Batman role here for this episode.
Well, you were a lot of help.
I tried to tell you she didn't steal the Jade Cat.
How do you know that?
I just know, that's all.
Oh, well, thank you, Miss Psychic. And you call yourself a crime fighter.
If you listened instead of just barging in...
Just don't get in my way again, okay?
Dork.
Yeah, it's an interesting. There's some interesting parts to it, but I think as far as a follow up to what we saw in Shadow of the Bat, it's hard to go from something that's that great and that loved to something that ultimately was just kind of a half step down. I feel like so not bad, but certainly not as good. I feel like as our previous appearances.
Yeah, it's definitely got its fun moments, and it is fun to get an episode where the boss isn't watching, and so the kids are running the show with Batgirl and Robin being the main heroes of that episode. But yeah, certainly not quite the memorable dramatic moments of our previous episodes, unfortunately. And that you would think that would wrap us up of on-screen appearances in the original BTOS run, but of course there was the Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero animated movie, the second BTOS movie. This one, of course, direct to video, originally meant to tie in with Batman and Robin, the live action movie, if I recall correctly. Though once that was underperforming, this was delayed quite a bit to the point where it came out after the new Batman Adventures was already, I believe, on the air, including the Mr. Freeze episode that follows the continuity of this, ironically. So go figure, things happen. But yes, our final BTOS adventure does feature Miss Gordon in quite a major way. First, briefly in her role as Batgirl, saving a jogger from some muggers before making her way over to a party where we do see that the sort of puppy love between her and Dick Grayson has apparently blossomed to where she and him are an item, and they're gonna spend the weekend together at a cabin upstate. But wouldn't you know it, Mr. Freeze is on the lookout for a blood transfusion to keep his ailing wife Nora alive. And wouldn't you know it, who else but Barbara Gordon happens to be a 100% donor match for Nora's rarer blood type. And so Barbara, this is probably the most damsel in distress she gets, though she does quite a bit of escaping on her own outside of Batman and Robin eventually piecing things together to come find her as they're hidden out on an oil rig. But yeah, Barbara kidnapped to try to save the life of Nora Freeze. First, almost there willingly because she's told it's just a simple blood transfusion. But then, of course, we find out that Barbara's probably not surviving that procedure, which is when the mood sort of shifts into her needing more of a rescue.
Ow, you're hurting me. Let me go.
Get her inside.
Let me go.
Put her on the table. I'll get the anesthesia.
You don't need to put me under for a blood transfusion. It's more than that, isn't it?
Hold her.
You promised not to hurt her.
Kunak, get out of here.
Stop it!
Hey! Get away! Nora! No! No! Don't let her get away!
Yeah, you can check out our review of the Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero movie on episode 336 of the podcast. We didn't love this movie. We gave it scores 26, both the same score, 26 out of 40. There's not a lot of Batgirl in this. She's in one sequence at the beginning, from my recollection, where she's taking out some bad guys, as Jim Gordon drunkenly describes his daughter and how badly like Dick should want to bang her or something like that. Essentially, it's very weird. It's a very weird.
I do remember that being a subplot.
So, and then, as you mentioned, much of it is Barbara gets captured, and then she tries to escape, and then she gets captured again, and then she tries to escape again. Obviously, she does play a pretty pivotal role in trying, I guess, trying to humanize a little bit and understand, Mr. Freeze as a character. But it is very much she's at times she's kind of placed in this role of just being the person that Batman and Robin are trying to get to. They're Princess Peach, if you will, trying to get her out of the castle. So, um, yeah, I think as far as bridging this to what happens next, it's a little it's a little out of left field. Again, it feels a little bit like it's kind of weird because maybe I think maybe famously the developers and the people that worked on this that worked on the movie while they were obviously people that worked on Batman the animated series. I don't think they had access or weren't aware of like the role as much of the role that as Batgirl was going to play in Batman and Robin or something. I think there was something there. So um I know Boyd Kirkland was obviously involved with the movie, and think I forget who else was on the involved with it, but yeah, as far as Batgirl's role for this, it does feel like a step down from where we left her. It's like, man, we don't even get much Batgirl at all. She gets this opening kind of kick-ass scene where she's taking out these bad guys, and then for the rest of the movie, she's kind of just in this holding cell for the remainder of it, kind of playing Princess Leia for Han and Luke to come rescue her. So yeah, not our favorite of the Batman animated tie-in movies to date. We still have one to go, but certainly kind of a role player in this for Barbara. So not her best representation, I feel like, for the show.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a subplot of her befriending this young like Eskimo boy named Kunak that is like Mr. Freeze's little sidekick in this movie, and she does make some escape attempts on her own and is menaced by some very intelligent polar bears. But yeah, it's not exactly a starring role for Miss Gordon, unfortunately, which does bring us to the end of her on-screen appearances. But before we move on to the other categories, we'll talk about the other things that went into. We talked about the plots, obviously, of all these episodes. But one of the things you've already kind of touched on it, Cal, one of the most important things that we talk about when it comes to a character is their corresponding music and the themes that follow them into future episodes. We've talked about that with Batman himself, Joker, and maybe even some characters not having a theme, and how that is almost kind of a missed opportunity. But especially because of that Shadow of the Bat two-parter with the work of Harvey Cohen that was overseen, of course, by the great Shirley Walker, who I believe actually wrote the Batgirl themes that are used. That Batgirl theme, I mean, you talk about earworm music. I think that is on one of the soundtrack compilations that they've put out. What a piece of music. The main Batgirl theme that they use for Shadow of the Bat parts 1 and 2, and then sort of excerpts of it are used in further episodes as well. But man, what a home run that music is.
Oh, I mean, there's a reason why our scores are so high for the Shadow of the Bat episode, and I mean, we gave music 10 out of 10 for that. That's a huge part of that character, the introduction of that character, the horns that play. It's one of the best, probably arguably top 3 in my opinion, solo songs that Shirley Walker composed outside of, if you're going to go outside of like the Batman theme, or the alternate Batman theme that doesn't get credited, to the Batman 89 character and Danny Elfman. But boy, howdy, like it sticks in your head. It's immediately identifiable. We'll talk about it later with toys, but you're playing with your toys as a kid. That song comes out of your mouth when your Batgirl action figure shows up, to help out your Batman and Robin. Like it is an incredible piece. It screams triumphant, heroic character entry to your screen, which is what you're obviously trying to communicate to your audience there, that this is a legitimate force to be reckoned with here that has appeared on your screen. And it's played, there's a couple of different parts to it that are played a little bit differently. It's played kind of in a slower downbeat as she's doing some of her investigating, which is great. It's wonderful. Yeah, and as you mentioned, it is available. I think it's available on all streaming services, at least the big streaming services. It's on one of the volumes there. Just look for the. I think you can just. I think it's if you just search Batgirl under Shirley Walker, you'll find the musical pieces there. But it's in the green album of the Batman the Animated Series soundtrack release. I think it's volume 3. But yeah, check that out if you haven't heard it in a while. It's one that'll stick with you, and it's one again, one of the many iconic pieces. But I think because it's associated with one of your heroes for the show, it's even more impactful. And yeah, it's one of the best pieces that Miss Walker wrote. And then obviously Mr. Cohen's work within the episode and how much he contributed to it. Kudos to him as well. But yeah, some good stuff there. Sadly, it's kind of left in this series. We don't really get it brought forward into the new Batman Adventures very much that I remember. So it is a little bit of a downer that it kind of stayed there, but it's yeah, with how great it is, it's iconic, even if it's just contained to those 2 episodes or 3 episodes where she dons the cowl.
Absolutely. But yeah, you said just so memorable. And then, of course, we wouldn't be complete in talking about the on-screen adventures of Barbara Gordon and Batgirl without talking about her voice actor. And in this case, it's voice actors. As for her main appearances in the show, we have a pretty famous name, at least from yesteryear, that being Melissa Gilbert, who, of course, folks would know from a show called Little House on the Prairie, which was a massive hit and then aired for years and years in syndication. I feel like especially during the day it was on constantly. I know we definitely I don't think maybe our sister was like a fan of it. I don't even know, but like I've seen like a ton of episodes of Little House on the Prairie somehow. So the fact that Laura Ingalls herself is Batgirl is kind of a pretty fun trivia note to mention here, and she's really good across with all due respect. And when we do volume 2 of this spotlight someday, we can talk about Tara Strong's work as Batgirl, and then obviously her voices in Beyond as well. But I really do think Melissa Gilbert coming back to the show maybe under a more critical lens over the years, she just has such a more unique voice quality that I feel like her Batgirl is the one that stands out the most to me across all of the various Barbara Gordons we get in the DCAU.
Yeah, I think there's something to, and maybe there is a little bit more character development that I gave credit to it, but in the new Batman Adventures, without talking completely about Miss Strong's performance, I think there is a bit of a hardened edge to it, almost like she's kind of been through it at this point. Batman's darker in this series, so she kind of takes on that darker persona. Because of that, Melissa Gilbert's performance in Batman the Animated Series, she has it's a very light-hearted, bubbly, not like quippy, although I think she does get a couple of quips in here or there, but it's not Lauren Lester's Robin to the point where you have some quips that are laid out there and she's clearly kind of like having a ton of fun doing this. There is a serious edge to it, but it is, she's a girl. She has a little bit of femininity to her. She's got a little bit of a feminine nature to her. She's got a little bit lightheartedness in it that the stern males, that are the alpha males that are running around here in their tights, don't quite have. So yeah, I think that I think Miss Gilbert's performance, there is some naivete that comes into it, which I think fits perfectly as we talked about for that last episode and her performance in that episode. And then just that, Batgirl she kind of has a brighter look at things. But she also, believes that her opinion is right. We see that in the way that she interacts with Batman a couple of times and Robin, obviously. So, there's still a strong woman in there. I think it's just softened a little bit here, and I think that plays for what the character is for this original Batman the Animated Series run.
Yeah, absolutely. There's such an exuberance to her, like you said, that kind of youthful quality to her in that series, that kind of adventurous side that I think is a lot of fun and very infectious. And yeah, just some of the interactions she has, whether she's bouncing off Lauren Lester as Robin or Kevin Conroy as Batman, or bouncing off no one because Barbara's talking to her teddy bear Whoopi, which we were remiss not to mention as part of her BTOS character arc. But yeah, she's great, and she gets a lot to do in those episodes. So it's a great job by her. And like I said, maybe just at the moment, and we'll see once we get through all of TNBA how I feel then, perhaps. But yeah, I do kind of think of her as the main DCAU Batgirl still, even though in quantity, certainly Miss Strong outranks her there. But speaking of which, we did have another voice actress take over her role for the Sub-Zero movie, Mary Kay Bergman. From memory, she does a fine job. Again, as we just talked about, Barbara's kind of sidelined in that episode or in that movie. It's not really her movie. It's more focused on Mr. Freeze. She does gets, like I said, some good scenes where she's kind of befriending this kid Kunak and trying to appeal to Mr. Freeze's humanity, but it's really hard. It's hard. Like it's not really a full appearance to really dissect the way we could with Miss Gilbert's multiple outings.
Yeah, I also remember us doing our best to be sensitive. She did pass away in 1999 under some tragic circumstances, so rest in peace to her. But yeah, I think in general, it was a different. I remember us feeling like, hey, this isn't Batgirl. This isn't what Batgirl sounds like, because we were so used to either Melissa Gilbert's performance or by that time Tara Strong's performance. So it was a little bit sort of jarring to hear somebody else in that role. It is a little bit of a different take on the character. So I think of the three, not to speak ill of the dead, but I think of the three Batgirl voice actors that we ended up with, I think, and maybe it's not fair because she literally only got one opportunity to voice her. So maybe just an incomplete grade would be more fair to assign Miss Bergman. But yeah, no, I think it lives on forever because it's obviously the one of three direct-to-video Batman the animated series, or four if you count, I guess, Batman and Harley Quinn for Batman direct-to-video movies. But yeah, it's not our favorite from my recollection.
Absolutely, Cal. So with all of that on-screen talk out of the way, we will move on to some of those great tie-in comics and, of course, toys and action figures and statues and the like. But before we get there, let's remind the folks the best way to support the podcast that you're listening is to head to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review and support the pod that way.
Absolutely, Liam. Buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review is the best way to support us. If you've been with us for one episode or all 400 episodes, this is our opportunity to just shout you out and say thank you. Thank you for the listening support. Thank you for those that have been supporting us on buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. You help us. We would do this podcast, we're going to be honest, with or without you. Liam and I started this just for fun 400 episodes ago. But, you know, part of the fun and the most fun that we've had, some of the most fun that we've had outside of doing the actual reviews and talking once a week about these old shows from our childhood is the interactions that we get. You know, there are a lot of people that we feel like kind of know us a little bit and enjoy and look forward to the podcast and interacting with you all on different social media platforms. You know, most of you. No, I'm just kidding. You know, we've been very, very fortunate to have nothing but really positive interactions with people on social media. So thank you. If you're one of those people that just are able to support us that way, thank you. If you're one of the people that are interested in, or you currently support us at buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review, you can head over there today, check it out. If you have not checked it out before, you know, we plug it each and every week. There are multiple ways to do so. You can become a one-time supporter of the podcast, and just as a one-time thanks, maybe you want to say happy 400. You know what? We'll take it. We appreciate it. Or maybe you want to become a monthly supporter. You want to try it out for a month. Hey, you want to send us a question and maybe get it answered on the air here? Become a monthly supporter at one of our three tiers. The top tier, the Super Friend tier, is the one that gets you the opportunity to potentially get a question answered here on the air about the episode that we're reviewing. So thank you. If you do support us, we appreciate it. If you're interested in checking that out, no time like the present, no day like today, head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. And please, we ask you to consider supporting the podcast today. We want to go to at least episode 500 for this. So that would go a long way.
Absolutely, Cal. And we thank everybody who supports us that way. But with that out of the way, we will move back into our show. And we'll kick it off with some comic book appearances here, Cal, including, as we mentioned last week, Barbara's first appearance as Batgirl came in Batman Adventures number 12, which just so happens to be, without a doubt, the most valuable DCAU tie-in comic ever created, for a reason that, unfortunately for her, does not really involve Barbara.
Really? It doesn't? Is it? Maybe it's because Poison Ivy? No, it's not Poison Ivy either. That's right. It is the very first appearance of Harley Quinn in comic book form. That's Batman Adventures number 12. As you mentioned, Batman Adventures Volume 1, number 12, with our penciler, the late great Mike Parobeck, with our writer Kelly Puckett, inkers DCAU legend Rick Burchett, and then we had Rick Taylor on colors, Tim Harkins on letters, and of course Scott Peterson and Darren Vincenzo were our editors for that issue. This is it's an interesting one because we see a party where Barbara runs into Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn. They're trying to kidnap this millionaire for a large ransom, and Barbara thinks fast, trying to outsmart the villains. And then before you know it, everybody gets knocked out by the party security guards. They're actually working for Catwoman. So there's another femme fatale that's involved with this. And then once everybody wakes up, Catwoman lets it be known what her objective is, and that's this diamond that's being displayed there above the party. And then meanwhile, Catwoman escapes with the diamond. Batgirl teams up with Poison Ivy, who helps her escape, and then Catwoman ultimately gets away. Batgirl manages to recover the diamond, though, at one point, and then earning a vow of revenge against Catwoman. So a little bit of foreshadowing here, although, of course, these comics are sort of loosely based on continuity for the show, but obviously she does eventually come in contact with Catwoman later on in Batgirl Returns, as we just talked about. But we see Batgirl in this. Barbara is able to narrowly hide her secret identity by throwing her costume in the trash, and avoids having an awkward conversation with her dad because of that. So as you mentioned, this issue is far more legendary for its appearance on print for the first time of Harley Quinn. But it's a fun little story here told. It's a little bit of, it's broken into a couple of acts, and those early Batman Adventures issues, which have been collected several times, but I know recently there was a huge omnibus that came out, that you can check that out in, or I'm sure, I don't think you'll be finding this one in at least the original printing in your back issues at your local comic store, at least not for a reasonable price because of what it is, but I'm sure you can find one of those collections a lot more easier. Check out one of the omnibuses if you want to follow up with this story.
Yeah, I think this one is even gotten like a facsimile reprinting in the last couple of years. So if you just want the cover, I'm sure you can find a version of it for a reasonable price. But if you want the OG, you're gonna have to break open a couple of piggy banks to afford that one, to say the least. Iconic cover too, because it's been it itself has been homaged many times since, including in the Batman: The Adventures Continue variant covers over the years. But that's certainly maybe the most memorable tie-in comic featuring Batgirl. But there were several more, including, I'll mention these in a pair here, Batman Adventures Volume 1, number 18, and Batman Adventures Volume 1, number 26. These, again, a little bit unique because they don't feature much Batman, and they both feature Batgirl and Robin team-ups here, as we see a bit more of the both Batgirl and Robin interacting, as well as Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson kind of following up on the brief little crumbs we got of that in the show.
Yeah, these are fun because again, we see it more as a rivalry for the show. As we mentioned, it's much more of a sibling rivalry type of relationship between the two of them. Here, they're a lot more friendly. It seems they seem to have a little bit more understanding and willing to work together. So yeah, there's some good camaraderie here. I think we read that number 18 issue until the cover came off, from my recollection. That one was in heavy rotation for the rereads as kids there. But that's both of those are some pretty fun issues with, again, some really fun covers for both of those. Some great stuff, of course, by surprise, the late great Mike Parobeck.
I was going to say the cover specifically to that issue 18 with Robin and Batgirl in a spotlight, kind of prowling towards the camera there. Famously, and by famously I mean just we would know this, you had a birthday cake with this image on it, if I recall correctly.
I do.
A little screen printed birthday cake action from whatever the local store at the time that we got this done for your birthday one year. I believe maybe a joint party with some of our siblings who share a birthday month with you. But yeah, that's I think why this image in particular, the Batman Adventures number 18 cover, may not be iconic to a lot of people, but it's iconic to me, to us, because it was your birthday cake as well.
Yeah, that's some fun Cal lore.
Absolutely. And then, of course, there would be some other major appearances that were either eventually turned into on-screen adventures or were tied in and were recapping those on-screen adventures. We, of course, have the Batman Adventures Holiday Special #1, which features the stories that would eventually be turned into the TNBA episode Holiday Nights. But you get Batgirl. If you wanted to see Batgirl versus Clayface in the mall, featuring Santa Harvey Bullock and all of that, you can see it with great art by Bruce Timm, and I believe colors by Glenn Murakami in that issue, written by Paul Dini, of course. And man, that issue is as much fun as the episode is. I think we've talked about that. The art in that book is so cool, and also you get the added wrinkle, the added value, so to speak, of it all being in the original BTOS timeline. So she's in her old gray and blue suit as opposed to the black and yellow.
Yeah, that's another one that I couldn't tell you how many times we read that holiday special. We actually did an entire episode on it. If you want to check it out, where we talked to Kevin Altieri, who obviously was a big part of that. So check that out in the archives if you'd like to hear a bonus episode on the holiday special. But yeah, that story being the first one that you read in the entire book is, I think, pretty special in and of itself there, that, you know, she gets the feature there in a Batman book. Obviously, there's plenty of Batman stories in the entire holiday special, but her being the featured tale there at the beginning of her doing her Christmas Eve shopping and all of that is obviously pretty iconic, you know, even before being turned into the animated episode later on in the new Batman Adventures.
Absolutely. And then, of course, there is also a comic book adaptation of Sub-Zero as well that features Barbara, as mentioned. Maybe the most famous part of that is, I do love the cover of that, which I believe is by Joe Staton. That features, it's this sort of imaginary scenario where Mr. Freeze is like kaiju size, and Batman and Robin are sort of swinging towards him as he's like gripping a passed out Batgirl in his hand. It's like, man, if that happened in the movie, it sounds like it would have been way cooler than the actual movie. But I do love that cover. It's great. I think they used it as the in-house print ad for it as well. And so you might, if you have any comics from that era, you may remember that image as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Besides Sub-Zero, she also made a couple appearances in the Batman and Robin adventures. Just like the show itself got renamed to include the Boy Wonders, so too did the tie-in comic. And she has a couple of appearances there. Issue 9 features a solo Batgirl adventure where she's taking on Talia, which I believe actually played into a multi-part storyline in the issues at that point. Also bled into the next issue or two as well, but fun to see her interact. Ironically, again, given the eventual romantic pairing of Batman and Batgirl, that she would have this sort of interaction with Talia, though this was obviously before that. Great cover for that one, I believe, by Rick Burchett as well, with a kind of a cool action shot. And then Batman and Robin Adventures number 21, which sees Batgirl have to match wits with the Riddler.
With an all-timer cover. I was looking at this and I was like, man, I don't think I've appreciated the great Ty Templeton's work for this one. It looks like an old-timey pinup. Just the pose that she has. She's sitting there with kind of she's on a giant question mark, and she's kind of resting on it. She's got her one leg lifted up, her other leg is stretched out. What a great pose there from Mr. Templeton. A really, really fun one for that one. But yeah, obviously her in the story Why is a Raven Like a Writing Desk, which I believe was in one of the riddles featured in Batman 66, if I recall. There's an episode where Frank Gorshin's Riddler asks Batman that exact riddle. So paying homage to what came before with that one there. But yeah, some fun stories. Again, they could do a little bit more with the storytelling here and provide some unique tales and interactions with characters that maybe the showrunners had run out of ideas for or didn't necessarily love as characters. Famously, the Riddler was not one of Bruce Timm's favorite villains for the show. So here, getting to use him in a different way, see him interact with a character we didn't ever actually get to see on screen interact with, a lot of fun with that.
Absolutely. And then our last two tie-in comics to talk about here are the sort of bridge comic book series, a lot of which was turned into episodes of the new Batman Adventures. But before those episodes had aired, at least, the Batman Adventures The Lost Years miniseries came out. And the first two issues of that feature kind of the official time in which Barbara goes from being sort of a freelancer, as it were, in the world of crime fighting to being welcomed into the Batcave, quite literally, and as Bruce reveals his secret identity, and by as a byproduct of that, also Dick Grayson's identity to Barbara, who is quite shocked to learn that her boyfriend and his mentor are in fact Batman and Robin, and sees her go toe to toe with the Joker in her own right as well. We'll talk about this probably more in length, obviously, later on when we cover the Old Wounds episode, which is the animated version of this story. But there is a bit more Batgirl, a bit more bang for your buck as far as Batgirl in these. We get a few extra scenes of Batgirl and Batman interacting in the Batmobile, as well as a little bit more of her and Robin's kind of back and forth. As we see, really, those two episodes are all about Dick Grayson deciding that the red and green spandex is no longer fitting as well as it used to, and it's time for him to move on. So we get to see Batgirl, and also technically, I guess canonically, these would be the last appearances of those original BTOS costumes. So once again, you get to see the events of that TNBA episode played out in the BTOS visual style, which is a bit of fun as well. So those would be her final two tie-in comics. Yeah, I love that Lost Year series. Another series that we just read over and over again. Even though we probably had some of the episodes they were based on tape, we still quite enjoyed those Lost Years comics over the years.
Yeah, there's so much to love about those. I think they were recently collected or they're going to be collected in the upcoming. I think they were recently collected, right? Yeah, they were.
The Gotham Adventures omnibus that's coming out.
Okay,
we'll feature them.
There you go. So if you don't have the opportunity to pick those up as back issues, or you don't have a local comic store near you, and you're looking for a way to get those collected, you'll have an opportunity here soon. Yeah, they're great. I do remember them being in heavy rotation also, just because it was fascinating to us how the what happened in between that changed the look of our show so much, and a canonical explanation for what happened, as well as why Dick Grayson was Nightwing now. All of that, lots of fun. So yeah, those issues, obviously some of that got turned into the Old Wounds episode, which we'll cover here probably in the next couple of months at some point, or in the next year or so. But there's still some stuff obviously that's there that they cut out or didn't have that. And as you mentioned, it's all in those old BTOS costumes. So if you prefer those, then you get to see that in action there. So yeah, some good stuff.
Absolutely, Cal. And as always, this is the point in the character spotlight where I must rely on you to guide us through. Because when, other than maybe Batman and Robin and the Joker, I don't know if there's a character spotlight we've had to date that has had this many toys and statues to talk about as Ms. Gordon does.
I will try not to bore the listeners at home for those of you who are not into collectibles. But I would be remiss not to mention just the sheer amount of collectibles. I'm only covering things that technically are based on the original Batman the Animated Series costume here. So no new Batman Adventure stuff, just as we've done with the episodes here. So there's even more Batgirl stuff than we're actually covering here. But I think the first one that I think is worth a mention and is very important because for a very long time, it was the only plastic three-dimensional representation of Batgirl. And I think to date, because they didn't ever really, other than more recent years and DC Direct and McFarlane, there was never an actual representation of the actual on-screen Batgirl costume other than the 1992-1993 McDonald's Happy Meal toy of Batgirl, which is crazy to think about. There weren't too many actual little action figures that you could play with in that set. There was a couple of there's a Two-Face in a car, there's Robin on a Robin cycle, there's Joker in a car, but they had a Catwoman, a Batman, a Riddler, and then Batgirl was your fourth action figure there. So I remember as kids getting that. Our sister had that was part of her hoist upon her action figure collection with having multiple brothers in the house there. So she did have this Batgirl figure. It's a really good, fun representation. Like I said, it's the only 3D plastic representation of the actual Batgirl costume for many, 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 many years, decades almost. So yeah, very fun little figure. Obviously it fits in. It's far below the scale of your Kenner action figures. It's 3 3/4 more Star Wars size figure, but that's a fun one to mention. We'd actually have to wait past the Batman the Animated Series sets way into the Adventures of Batman and Robin Kenner sets. I think it was the Crime Squad Duo Force days where we ended up getting our first 5-inch or 4.75-inch, whatever representation you want to call, of Batgirl in that series with Wind Blitz Batgirl. She's wearing like this funky multicolored costume. It's like black and gray. She's got the gloves and the boots, but they're painted differently. She's got the hair hanging out the back, which is good enough. And honestly, it looks more like what her costume eventually evolved into in the new Batman Adventures than it does what she looked like in Batman the Animated Series. But, I remember this coming out for the first time. And again, maybe it was just the conditioning that our sister had of wanting to play toys with us, but she was very excited. I remember her getting this for the first time. I have it as a part of my figure collection now on card in the basement hanging up. It's a cool figure, although it is not a faithful representation, as so many of those characters ended up not being for what we saw on screen. But very fun to get that done. They eventually re-released that, I think, with a repaint to make it look like the Batman 66 and the purple, like with the purple suit in one of the later series once Hasbro was in ownership over Kenner. But that's a fun one. We also had, of course, later on, we would eventually get the first real official, playable, posable action figure in the faithful to what we saw on screen once DC Direct took over and started putting out their Batman the Animated Series figures. She came with a couple of different hands from that. That was later re-released under the McFarlane Banner once they started doing all their re-releases and their Build-A-Figure sets. So that's something you can pick up now. I remember Batgirl, I think on the original release was pretty scarce, hard to come by. So a lot of people were pretty happy once the Batgirl re-release. I think you, being a collector of the heroes of that DC Direct line, were pretty happy for your wallet's sake also not to have to put out $3 to get add Batgirl to your collection, from my recollection as well.
Yes, a game changer. These re-releases. The Build-A-Figures have since harmed my wallet in a different way, but the McFarlane re-releases of some of these characters certainly have made it a little bit easier on me. So very appreciative, and it's a solid figure.
There you go. All right, now I'll kind of run through these rapid fire here for those listening at home. Of course, because it's 2026 and we live in the day of just collect them all. Of course, she has a Funko Pop also. So Funko, of course, put out a lovely Funko Pop figure of her in that set. Those Batman the Animated Series, especially the early ones, I think those are also pretty pricey these days. I wouldn't be shocked to see if Funko goes the way of some of the other larger toy companies and starts doing re-releases of those very hard to find Funkos also at some point here. So maybe if they don't go out of business before then you'll have an opportunity to get that Batgirl again if you're a Funko collector. But it's always fun to see what they do with those sets for the Batman the Animated Series set. I know that there's a lot of hard to come by collector's edition versions of those. So good luck if that's something that you're interested in. Of course, they've done a ton of different statues of her also. So dating back to the old DC Direct days, there's a really cool one that I found from 2001 where she's posed very similarly actually to that Ty Templeton cover, but she's sitting on a bat signal. I think it was limited edition to 5,000 of this statue. A very, very cool looking design there. Something that would look nice. We've made it very well known here on the show. We're not typically statue guys, but maybe an exception would be made for something like that if I had a big empty space on my shelf there, because it is a lovely piece. I don't know what the price range on that is these days, some 25 years later, but certainly if you see it at a comic book show and it's worth, if you feel like it's a fair price, I would pick it up if I were you. There's also another fun one where Diamond Select, who is a company that was making, I think they were mostly PVC statues, so they were much cheaper than those ceramic ones, a lot more sturdy, a lot less easy, a lot harder to break or fall off a shelf and snap like some of those more fragile ones. They have a really interesting one where she's actually standing, the base of the statue, I think she's holding a batarang. The base of the statue is actually the roof of a GCPD cop car. You can see the sirens on top there, and she's kind of standing there in this pose. That one also is a pretty fun one. She was a part of this Femme Fatales set that they put out with, there's a couple of other DCAU heroes and villains that are in that set. So that one is really cool. I thought the base alone was a pretty neat little addition there. There's a Hero Collector set, which was the subscription magazine, I think, that was based in the UK that came out. They did a monthly subscription. You would get a magazine and a little mini, like 4-inch statue sent out to you. Batgirl's in that set and was one of the more rare characters. I think she was on the dying days. Those statues were super fragile also, and that company eventually went out of business. So I think in the very end of that run, she was one of those statues there. That one's pretty rare. There's another DC Direct bust. The Batman the Animated Series busts, I know, are pretty collectible in a lot of the Batman the Animated Series Facebook groups that are around. I see people trading those, and those are pretty sought after as well. And then, I think the last one to mention here is these. I thought it was pretty fun. Not one that we mention every time we do the collectibles, but Kubricks, which are these little like squares, like they're kind of like if a Lego had got into the Honey I Blew Up the Kid machine and like grew a couple of inches and got a little bit more articulation added to it. I don't know, maybe like a K'NEX figure or something like that. I don't know how to explain it, but there's a Batgirl, there's a bunch of Batman the Animated Series Kubricks, but Batgirl even got a release in that one. So that's my rundown for our Batman the Animated Series style Barbara Gordon. I'm sure there's also a Hero Clicks out there someplace, and I may have missed one or two. So that's
Indeed
your
there
action.
is. I'm looking at it right now.
There you go. There's your action item for the week. If you're listening here, if there's a collectible that I overlooked, please send it our way and shame me for not identifying it properly. But yeah, that's the rundown of our Batgirl collectibles for that original Batman the Animated Series run. If you're looking to start or complete your Batgirl collection, this should be your pretty definitive list.
Yeah, great. I mean, you mentioned it, how great that and iconic that one of her, this statue of her sitting on the bat signal is. But man, every time I see that, if I'm at a comic shop or a comic con and I see an old version of that, I'm like, you can't also collect statues. You collect comics, you collect action figures and other DCAU related tchotchkes, but you have to draw the line somewhere.
The line must be drawn or you will go mad. Yes.
Absolutely. This and that yeah, that's a Pandora's box I can't open. But that Batgirl is on the top of the list of ones who make me, stroke the chin and go, what if, to say the least. Just a awesome statue, one of the best, I think, DCAU statues of all time. So with all that out of the way, and thank you, Cal, for walking us through that. Yeah, I would love to know if there's another repaint of something we're forgetting, or now that Funko's doing these posed ones, I feel like you could do one based off of Shadow of the Bat, maybe that final shot of her with like her fist clenched,
or her with where she's from Batgirl Returns, where the subway runs in front of her.
Yeah,
or even the
that would be
title
cool.
card. The title card got an extra point from you from Batgirl Returns. Like, you could even have her in that pose.
That's a great one.
Yeah, there's plenty of options there.
Yeah, that's a future wish list. I think the Funko, again, not something I collect a ton of, but I feel like almost everybody, our parents have one or two Funko Pops lying around. They're so ubiquitous these days. So excited to see if we get more Batgirls down the pipe. Maybe by the time we're doing volume 2 of a character spotlight on Batgirl down the line, there will be even more merch to talk about. But for today, Cal, that will begin to wrap us up. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Whether you started on episode 1 or if you started on episode 399, that's a weird one to start on. But either way, we appreciate you, and anywhere in between, we appreciate you as well. As always, your best ways to support us for free are to just make sure you're following us on your social media apps of choice. Mostly we're active on the Instagram and the artist formerly known as Twitter, but you can also find us on Blue Sky, Threads, even technically Facebook. If you want to reach out to us and let us know your thoughts on this episode or anything else that we've covered. We always appreciate that sort of feedback. Another great free way to support us is to make sure you're subscribed on whatever your podcast app of choice is. If it lets you rate us, give us 5 stars. If it lets you leave a review like it does on Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review. We'll read it out on the show and give you a shout out, even send you a little gift. And that's a great free way to support us. And make sure you're subscribed to us on our YouTube page, even if you don't listen to podcasts on YouTube. I know a lot of people do. We would appreciate that, just because the more subscribers you get, the more options you have on your YouTube page. So we would appreciate that as well. And as mentioned, there are some more direct monetary ways to support us. In the show notes of this very episode, in the description, you can find a link to our store page where you can pick yourself up a hat or a shirt or a mug or something. And of course, there's the best way to support us financially, which is at buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. Do a one-time support there. You can become a monthly subscriber. And as Cal mentioned earlier, even get questions read out on the show if you subscribe at that level. So however you choose to support us, we hope you will continue to support us next week on episode 401, when we keep in this world of Batman the Animated Series / the new Batman adventures. And boy, howdy, what a banger we've got to talk about next week.
Yeah, in our 400 episodes, it seems like something happens all the time where we just accidentally if you didn't know any better, you would think that we planned the fortuitous nature in which the episodes that we'd review come up, right? You'd think, especially with next week's episode, which if you've been living under a rock, you may not have seen the very exciting, I think there was a buzz, I dare say, about the trailer for the next DC Universe movie, not named Supergirl, coming out later in October, that being the Clayface movie. So if you haven't been living under a rock and you're aware, then you know the buzz, of course, that was and is around that movie and kind of what that movie might end up being for both the DCU, for storytelling in superhero movies. A lot of things could be different once that movie, if it's successful and or good. So with that, we definitely planned that next week's episode would happen to be a Clayface-centric episode, not just a Clayface-centric episode, but maybe one of the most emotional episodes, certainly of the new Batman adventures, but maybe of the entire Batman the Animated Series run. It has a lot of heartstrings being tugged. It's got a lot of memorable moments in it. We recently talked with Robin's voice actor, Matthew Valencia, about his performance in this episode and what this episode meant to him. Might even drop some of those sound bites in that episode. But yes, we'll be covering Growing Pains next week, which of course features Robin meeting a runaway girl named Annie who shows up, and what her relationship is to Clayface is yet to be seen. But I got a feeling it's going to end in heartbreak.
Absolutely. Can't wait. This is, spoiler alert, this is my favorite episode of the new Batman Adventures, and I'm ecstatic that we get to talk about it next week. And it'll be interesting. This will be, though I've watched it many times, even somewhat recently, I have not ever done it while taking notes and putting it under the critical lens. So we'll see if my opinion is any different when we get to it next week. Can't wait. But until then, I'm Liam.
And I'm Cal.
And we'll talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Arrivederci!